Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of One Man Stream. In today's episode, we're actually going to touch on a topic that we've talked about previously, and that was dealing with a data source, namely an Excel spreadsheet, and we were able to move up and down in that spreadsheet by just a few commands. The buttons that I'm pointing to is the DataSourceSelectRow and Next Row and Previous Row. And if I bring the spreadsheet back in, this is actually from the Data Sources menu. I'm pushing the button right now that says Next Row, and you can see how it's going down in that spreadsheet. And then if I push Previous Row, you can see how it goes up. And I always like to have a starting point in my spreadsheet, so I use this DataSourceSelectRow, and if I click on it, you'll see where it goes to the first row. The buttons we were clicking were DataSourceSelectFirstRow, and then Next Row, and then Previous Row. And that's what I was demonstrating on the previous screens. On this spreadsheet that I use, I have an awful lot of information. And I'll scroll through it, and you can see that it goes on for quite some time. And this is my football setup, and it has everything that I use during my football production. And to start off with, the first thing that we do is when we start off, you can see it right here, where it says game intro overlay, announcer overlay, and then weather sponsor overlay. What I've done recently, and it's made it a little bit simpler for me, is instead of having to use the previous and next row with vMix UTC, you can actually have it go to a specific row. Now, the only thing that you need to remember is in vMix, the very first row is actually called row 0. In vMix UTC, when we're telling you what row to go to, row 1 is actually going to be designated row 0, and then row 2 would be designated row 1, row 3 would be designated row 2, and so on. So what I'm going to do is for these particular elements that I want to play out, and the ones I'm going to show you are weather overlay, and then the visiting team package, keys to the game, and then the home team package. I actually have set up buttons on my vMix UTC layout that's going to take me to those particular parts of my spreadsheet. And let me show you how we do that. So this is what the button is going to look like for weather. So we're going to click on weather. And what it says here is it says DataSourceSelectRow, and the row that we're going to have it select is row 3. And then we have to put the name and table in for our spreadsheet. And the name of the table is Excel \CSV. Then we have to put a comma with no space. And I have several pages on this spreadsheet set, and this one is the data source for overlays. The second command we're going to use is OverlayInputX. We're going to use this input right here, and then we're going to do this on overlay channel 2. So when I click this button, it's going to do two things. It's going to automatically go to the data source, and it's going to select row 3, and then it's going to put row 3 into this graphic right here, this input right here, and we're going to do that on overlay channel 2, and then it's going to overlay that input. So let's see what happens, and we're going to have to go to our main vMix. So let's see what happens when I click on this button right here that says weather. And you can see it brings in our weather graphic that's sponsored by these folks right here. And then to go to the weather, I'm going to click the next row because I know in this particular asset I have two different things I want to show. I'm going to click the next row, and when I do that, it brings in the weather. So to get rid of it, I'm going to come over here to where it says main graphic input right here, and I'm going to click that, and then it's going to go away. Well, let's go ahead and bring this in, and you can see this is our spreadsheet, and the weather input right here for the weather sponsor, which was the first part of it we brought up, it shows number 4, but we know that that's actually row 3. And then the second row that I used was this one right here that says 5, which is row 4. And that's how we get this to overlay. So the next thing we're going to go to is we're going to go to the visiting coaches package that we use in our pregame. So let's go ahead and bring this back up. And then I'm going to click on the button that says visiting coach. And when I click on it, you can see the visiting coach package begins. Well, I have about 5 different elements in this. So I'm going to click the next row, and it's going to bring me to the next part. And then I'm going to click next row again, and it brings this information in. And as you've noticed, we're not creating multiple graphics. We've created one graphic. It's actually the same graphic we use for weather. We are just populating it with different information within that spreadsheet set. So I'm going to click next row one more time, and it brings in some of the key players. One more time, and it brings in a few more key players. And then we're going to get rid of that because we're getting ready to go to a commercial break. And it takes that away. So we'll bring this back in, and I'll show you the information we were just using. This is where we would start with visiting team package, and then we just went through these other elements. But all we did is we started with this one, and then we used the next button until we came down to right here. And then all we did was clicked on that button once more, and it took that graphic away. The next thing I wanted to show you were keys to the game, and that is this button right here, keys to the game. So let's go ahead and click on it and look behind it. And you can see that we're dealing, it says row 16, so we know on the spreadsheet it's actually row 15. And then we have the exact same information that we had in the other button that we just showed you. So when we click on it, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to immediately go to row 16 of our data sheet, and we have it designated as the name and table right here. And then it's going to overlay input X, and input X is referring to overlay 2 on this input right here. It's the same graphic we've been using in this entire demonstration. So let's go ahead and click on it, keys to the game. And it brings in the first part, and it brings in our keys to the game sponsor. And then I'm going to hit the next row, and it brings in the keys to the game for the visiting team. And I'm going to click the next row button again, and it brings in the keys to the game for the home team. And I'll go ahead and click to get rid of the main graphic. Now what you can't see is when this main, I've entitled this my main graphic, so anytime I use any of these buttons right here, it brings in on overlay channel 2, that graphic we're talking about, and that's actually our main graphic. So this is going to light up letting me know that I have this currently displaying in my output. So the next thing I wanted to come to is the home team package. And so let's go back to this right here. And the home team package starts right here. And when I click that first button, or when I click the home team package button, you're going to see where it jumps to that right there, and then it brings that graphic in. So I'm going to go to the next row. All I'm doing is clicking the next row button. It brings in the next portion of this set. I'll click the next row again. It brings in the next portion of this set. Again, we're not creating new graphics. All we're doing is populating the same graphic with different elements within this spreadsheet set. It takes so much fewer resources because we're not making multiple graphics. We're just making one graphic, and then we're populating it within the spreadsheet set. So I'm going to click the next row one more time, and then that's going to get rid of it. And then a couple more things I wanted to show you just why I have this look up here. We're going to go to series record. I have a button for series record. It brings in this graphic right here. Again, the same graphic, just a different area of the spreadsheet. At the end of the game, we have most outstanding players for both teams. And the first thing I click on, I'll click on the most outstanding player button. And it's going to bring in our sponsor. And then I'm going to click next row because we have one more element within this. And it's going to bring in our most outstanding players. I actually have this set up for the game this Friday, so I don't have any most outstanding players listed. So just to reiterate, we are using these buttons right here. This one right here that said visiting coach. This one says home coach. This one said keys to the game. This one said most outstanding player. And all we're doing is clicking on these buttons, and it's firing off that same graphic, but it's taking us to different areas within that spreadsheet to populate that information. What we're using is the command DataSourceSelectRow, and instead of using 0 like we did to set it up for as our starting point to go to the very first row, again 0 is actually 1 in vMix, we have this one for 16, which is going to take us to the designated area within the spreadsheet, and it's going to bring in that information that we want for this particular element. It's a time saver, it's very handy, it's very simple to set up, and I think you're going to find it very useful within your production. If you have a moment, please stop by our website. That is at onemanstream.com. That's where we have our graphics store and more. And I've just recently uploaded several new graphics, and some of them are pretty neat. So you may want to stop by there and check them out. For all of you that have stopped by the graphics store and made purchases, thank you very much. The graphics are just a few dollars, but it is a way that you can help support One Man Stream. And as always, thank you so much.